Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Welcome, Couch Coach Nation. It's championship weekend, and by this time next week, we'll know all the bowl games and who's in and who's out of the college football playoffs. In their most recent offerings, Ole Miss stayed where they're at, even though the committee had set a precedent in 2023 by dropping Florida State out of the playoffs with a significant loss to a player or a coach. They don't seem to be doing that this year since an SEC team's involved. Then you've got Alabama that won that close game to 5-7 Auburn, and they were able to jump Notre Dame. Notre Dame beat Stanford by 29, who beat Florida State, who beat Alabama. It looks like they just want a little extra cushion for Alabama should they lose the SEC championship game so that they can move them down but still keep them in the playoffs and knock Notre Dame out. AV, any thoughts on how the playoffs are shaping up?
Yeah, I think the most interesting storyline is Miami Notre Dame, to me anyway. It'll be interesting to see what happens if BYU loses this weekend, where that puts Miami and Notre Dame, because if they're back-to-back, they could favor head-to-head. There's some kind of wording to where head-to-head would be considered more closely if it's a close matchup, right? So if they're back-to-back in the rankings, head-to-head's considered. That'll be interesting. All of that is moot until we see how the conference championships play out and see who steals a spot or who doesn't and that kind of thing. But to me, watching the Miami Notre Dame battle for that last, it seems to be the last spot, was interesting.
Mario Cristobal had an interesting take when talking about Texas and their belief that they should be in. And he said, we've got a common opponent, and Florida dominated Texas and Miami dominated Florida. So nothing more to say. Thought that was really interesting from Coach Cristobal. Well, the season's almost wrapping up, and I want to remind you that while seasons end, conversations don't. Couch Coach Nation has you covered. Join us now and our Saturday championship weekend chat. Come and chat with us. This is where discerning fans talk ball all year round. We use real names with real fans and give real respect. Now, let's make a couple of quick picks. Conference USA, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. JSU won the regular season matchup just 3 weeks ago by 9 points. They're at home again, 2.5-point favorite. I got Jacksonville State getting it done again.
Yep, Jacksonville State at home in a rematch. They're the better team, I think. I'll take them.
Mountain West, Boise State versus UNLV. Boise State won the regular season matchup by 25. I expect this game to be closer, but Boise State still gets the win.
Yeah, it will be closer. Dan Mullen's a good coach. He'll make some adjustments. They'll score some points. Hard for me to bet against Boise, though. I'll take Boise.
In the MAC, Miami of Ohio versus Western Michigan. They also played in the regular season, and Miami won this game at home, which was Western's only conference loss. This game's in Detroit on a neutral field. Western Michigan, they're a 2.5-point favorite. I like Western Michigan to get some revenge and the win.
I'm going to take Miami of Ohio, and especially if you're giving me points. But just to the outright win, I'll take Miami in the upset since they're getting the points.
In the Sun Belt, Troy versus James Madison. JMU, they're at home. They're a 23.5-point favorite. JMU's got a legitimate shot of making the college football playoffs, so there's no time for let up. They both played Old Dominion. Troy lost 33-0. James Madison won 63-27. Give me JMU all day.
Yeah, James Madison's a good team. They'll beat a lot of FBS teams. I definitely think they'll beat Troy.
In the American Athletic Conference, North Texas versus Tulane. This is a battle of Oklahoma State and Florida's new coaches. North Texas offense, they're explosive, averaging 100 more yards per game than Tulane and almost 20 points more per game. North Texas has scored over 50 points in 5 of their last 6 games. Statistically, they're pretty similar defensively. North Texas is a 2.5-point road favorite. Tulane was ranked by the committee, and so North Texas, they go on the road because they had the same records. The home field advantage went to the higher ranked team by the committee. I've got North Texas. I've been high on them for about a month, ever since USF kind of fell off. I've got them winning 45-31 and making the playoffs.
Yeah, I love North Texas's offense. I love watching them. They put up a ton of numbers. Hard for me to bet against a team that can just keep scoring. I'll go North Texas.
Now we're getting into the Power Four, and by that I mean barely, because we're going to talk the ACC first. Duke versus Virginia. Virginia's a 3.5-point favorite. Duke's Darian Mensah is the ACC leading passer. Virginia counters with Jamari Taylor, the conference's leading rusher. UVA, they're more balanced offensively than Duke. If they can slow down the Blue Devils' passing game by running the ball and keeping Mensah on the sidelines, the night will go very well for them. They did play 3 weeks ago, and Virginia won 34-17, but it was 31-3 going into the fourth quarter with Virginia ahead. A Duke win would cause chaos in the playoff committee. I don't see it happening. I've got the Cavaliers winning closer, 27-20.
I think UVA matches up well with them. Like Duke's, obviously Mensah gives them a shot. When you have a really good quarterback, you always got a shot to score points, and that gives you a chance to win. But UVA's got a really good front seven. They can run the ball to keep it out of his hands. I also think that UVA has a really good quarterback as well that can make plays with his feet. But here's the thing is, it would be so ACC for Duke to win and them to get left out. Like, I can almost just taste it happening right now. So it'll be interesting. And I say this with all seriousness, even though this is conspiracy theory stuff. It'll be interesting to see if the refs lean towards UVA in this game, if they've been given the order or not. So that said, I do think UVA is the better team. I think it'll be an ACC stinker. How many people will be watching this game the same time as Ohio State, Indiana?
It's going to be ugly. I mean, this game kicks off at 8 o'clock, and I don't see anybody watching it other than maybe halftime of the
multi-view saves them a little bit, but I got UVA 26-19 in a gross game. It's probably going to rain in Charlotte like it always does.
The Big 12 championship game, BYU versus Texas Tech. Their regular season matchup was at Texas Tech, and even though the score was 29-7, Texas Tech dominated this game start to finish. Vegas agreed by making Texas Tech a 12.5-point favorite. This game's in Arlington, Texas. I wasn't a believer early on in the Red Raiders. They've convinced me. I've watched them a bunch. They can play with any team in the country. They're absolutely, with a win, a bye in the college football playoffs. They're one of the 4 top college football teams in the country. They can play with Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia. It doesn't matter. Offensive and defensively, they're solid. I've got them cruising to a playoff bye 35-13 over BYU.
Interesting. BYU was beaten soundly that first game for sure, but they did have a couple of things that they did. They had 4 sacks in the first half against Texas Tech, so they could pressure the quarterback. Bear Bachmeier, the BYU quarterback, he completed 61% of his passes for just under 200 yards. That's not killing it, but it's not hurting you either. It's not bad. The problem is they couldn't run the ball. They had 35 yards rushing the whole game. I think BYU will figure that out a little bit. They'll be able to run the ball more. They'll be able to hold the ball more if they can cut down on their turnovers. They had a couple. I think they can make this a better game than what it was before. I still think Texas Tech wins. I think, to me, Texas Tech is easily a top 4 team. They play offense and defense at a really high level. But I do think BYU will score some points this time and make it a little better of a game. I've got Texas Tech 35-24.
I think the only way this game is closer is if BYU is playing on an emotional high with Kalani Sitake staying in Provo. That might give them a little bump, that news that came out this week. Just looking at the 2 teams and what they've done this year, I think BYU's a really good team. I think they deserve to be in the playoffs, even with a loss. With your only loss being 2 losses to Texas Tech, I think they are a playoff caliber team, but not against Texas Tech. In the SEC, down in Atlanta, Georgia versus Alabama. Georgia's a 2.5-point favorite. Their lone blemish on the year was a 3-point home loss in Athens to Alabama. In the first game, Georgia started slow, and they were down 14-0 just a little bit into the second quarter. Georgia had a fumble deep in their own territory. That led to a Bama field goal in the second quarter. Georgia's got to come out ready to play. They can't get in a hole like they did before. Kirby, take them out into the parking lot, run the first quarter through in the parking lot before the game actually starts, so Georgia's ready to play. I've had questions about the Georgia defense at the start of the year, but they've really grown as the season's progressed, and they're difficult to score on. Offensively, they got to get something going in the passing game, because against Georgia Tech, their passing attack was non-existent. Stockton, I think, threw for 70 yards. They got to find some offense, and they got to find offense early in the game. AV, how do you see this one?
Yeah, I think you nailed a lot of the key points. I think a couple of weeks ago when they played Texas, I said that I picked Texas to win that game, which obviously didn't happen, but I said it was because of Georgia's lack of pass rush, and they sacked Arch Manning 3 times, I think. So in the first 9 games of the year, they only had 11 sacks total. In the last 3 games, they've got 6 sacks. So their defense is picking up. I also, on the flip side, think Ty Simpson and that Alabama offense is starting to show signs of stuttering a little bit. They struggled against Auburn to score, and that's not the first time over the last few weeks. So I think this starts to kind of match up in Georgia's favor, where their defense is starting to pick up. Alabama's offense is good still, but not dominant. And you hit the other point where Gunnar Stockton's got to throw the ball, because in the first game, Georgia ran for over 220 yards against Alabama, but he only threw for 120, and they lost. There's got to be a better balance than that. I think Georgia can run the ball against Alabama. If they can mix in the throw, they'll start scoring more points. I've got Georgia winning 28-17.
I'm a really close score with you. Kirby's been to the SEC championship game a bunch. He knows the formula. He knows what he needs to do and how to get his team ready to play. I've got the Dogs winning 24-17. This third loss for Alabama is going to have the committee really looking hard at them versus other teams with only 2 losses. A lot of folks think that you shouldn't be eliminated because of a conference championship game loss. In this particular year, it might be the time that they've got to fall out because of Miami, because of Notre Dame, if BYU beats Texas Tech, and now that takes another spot. A third loss could put Alabama on the outside looking in. We move to the Big Ten championship game. Indiana, Ohio State, number 1 versus number 2, old school versus new school. And I'm fired up for this game. I hope it's everything that I've built it up in my mind to be. Ohio State's got the number 1 scoring defense in the country, allowing 7.8 points per game. Indiana's the number 2, allowing 10.9 points per game. In total defense, Ohio State's 1, Indiana's 2. Offensively, Indiana's number 5 in total offense. Ohio State's 24. Indiana's got the number 2 scoring offense. Ohio State, number 13. They each have a strong Heisman contender, with Ohio State's Julian Sayin and Indiana's Fernando Mendoza. The ballots aren't due till 48 hours after this game ends. If one of those quarterbacks has a big game in victory, they could lock up the Heisman Trophy. AV, how do you see it?
I mentioned last week that I've kind of been disrespecting Ohio State all year, and not really disrespecting them and being disrespectful, but always saying, oh, Texas A&M looks like the best team in the country. Alabama looks like the best team in the country. Now it's Texas Tech for me, but I think the best team in the country all year has been Ohio State. I do. They just handle their business. They're bigger, faster, stronger. They don't let you score. If you score once, you're lucky. And then flip the script on Indiana, and it's like, how do you stop them from scoring? They're the Cinderella, the feel of a Cinderella story in this game. I do think you're right about the Heisman in a sense. I don't think Julian Sayin has a chance to win the Heisman even with a big game here, but Fernando Mendoza does. If he puts up numbers and they win that game, I think he's the Heisman winner. If he doesn't, then I think it goes to Paiva, Vanderbilt's quarterback. But I don't know. I think Ohio State handles business like they did all year, and I just think that if they come out, yeah, they may give up a play or two. Indiana's got a really good offense. They're going to score more than 7 points, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to stop Ohio State. Ohio State's defense will be able to get stopped. 31-20 is what I got it for Ohio State.
The Ohio State defense, I believe the most points they've given up was 16 to Illinois. Indiana's got a great offense, great defense. I think this is a sneaky underplay because of how good both teams' defenses are. But Ohio State, man, that defense, they put clamps on teams like few defenses in the past have. They could be right up there with the 2001 Miami Hurricane defense. That might be a big step, but what they're doing in college, they may not have all the NFL big names and NFL all-time greats that defense had, but what they're doing in college, this 2025 Ohio State defense is one of the best I've ever seen. I've got Ohio State 20-14. AV, not a lot of games to choose from in the book club. You got a couple games for us?
Hey, man, we don't just throw out picks to throw out picks, but I found a couple that I like. We talked about one already, the Georgia-Alabama game. I think Georgia's going to win. It's the 2.5-point cover. I think they cover that. You made a good point about Georgia having the blueprint for the SEC championship because Kirby's been there so many times. And on the flip side, Alabama's been there a million times, but this Kalen DeBoer team is still fairly new at us. I like Georgia to win that game, cover the 2.5. And then I like the Texas Tech BYU over. I think they're going to score in the 50s. I think it's going to be 30-something to 20-something. My predicted score is 35-24. So that's 59. The over is 49.5. I think they get the 50 fairly easily. I think this is being that the line's being deflated a little bit based off the first matchup, which I don't think is going to be indicative of the second one.
My bonus pick's also an overplay, and I'm going to the Sun Belt Troy and James Madison to go over 47.5. As I said earlier, JMU, they're at home. They're a 23.5 point favorite. I told you about the common opponent there in Old Dominion. I'm actually picking James Madison to win this 48-21, so JMU would cover the total by themselves. If that's a little bit too ambitious for you, at home versus the conference, JMU's only been held below 35 points one time this year. As long as they hit that 35 plus, which I think is easy for them to do, Troy would only need to score 14, and then every point over 35, that gives you wiggle room there on Troy. I have no problem with James Madison getting over 35. Troy's going to get a touchdown or two. I think this is an easy over 47.5 for Troy and James Madison. Join us this weekend at CouchCoachNation.com. Get in the chat. Let's talk some football. And you can follow the Complete BS Pod on X and Instagram. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.